How do you establish trust when building relationships?
I think establishing trust is somewhat of a two-step process. I think the first step is that for me as an individual, I do a bit of an assessment about someone. Is this someone who I believe I can trust for whatever role we're engaging in? Do they have the skills? Do they have the knowledge? Do they have the mindset? So really, putting the burden on me to kind of enter the relationship and have done my diligence, if you will. And then I think, once I believe that the person is the right person, the second part of the process is really you have to be kind of jumping in. It's the kind of situation where you can't say that you're going swimming and then, at the end of the day say, well, I didn't really go swimming, I only dipped my toe in the pool. Like, if you're going to go swimming together, you might as well just jump in the water. And I think when you're talking about trusting someone, you really can't be halfway trusting. You can't give them half the authority or half the permission. You have to trust that they're going to, in business at least, do the work and do it with a high quality. And certainly it's your responsibility to follow up and be there and kind of be working with them along the way. But trust is a hard thing to negotiate, and you can't be halfway there, I guess is my opinion.
Sure. And as someone that spent time teaching 8th and 9th grade science students, what did those students teach you about trust and relationships?
So as a teacher, you have this belief that your students like you, or at least you hope they like you, or maybe you don't even care if they like you, as some teachers would say. But it's hard to understand the trust that your students place in you as a teacher. And my first year teaching 9th grade students, I was in a particularly turbulent school. And, it's not like the students were walking around waving flags that said, rah, rah, Mr. Geller. Certainly, though, inside my classroom, we were getting a lot done, and it seemed like the dynamic was right. And I think that, what my students taught me about relationships really came through in an incident that, several types of incidents that happened, right? But one in particular where in the afternoon, one day after school, I think the students were mad at a different teacher, and they decided that the way they were going to express this was that they threw like a big piece of asphalt at the back of the car, which is certainly not an appropriate response to a situation. I'm not condoning this behavior. The problem was that the angry students hit my car, not the actual teacher with whom they had the problem with. Further complicating the fact is that there was a 50% chance that that the student who did this was one of my students, since there were only 2 science teachers in the building. So, a lot of emotions ensued, and I was angry. Why did somebody do this to me? But I think what was really interesting about the whole affair, if you will, was that students came to me and were like, "Oh, Mr. G, do you want us to go find out who did this?" And I was worried that if I said, "Oh yes, find out," that it was going to lead to bad things. So I'm like, no. And I'm sure they didn't mean it. Let's just kind of let it go by. But I think what was telling about that situation was the fact that, here the students are, they're in 9th grade. They walk around with such a air of independence, and we don't need the adults. But then I think their true feelings that had grown, that trust that had grown out of the relationships that had been built in our classroom really came through in that moment, with them coming to me and saying, you've been hurt. Do you want us to come to your aid? That's a very similar reaction to the kind of most ideal relationships that somebody would describe for 2 adults, whether in a personal or social situation. And here they were, my students in 9th grade, coming to me, the teacher, trying to kind of, stand up for me the same exact way.